Like a silver streak across the midnight sky, our stories move with a brilliance and speed that you will never forget. Experience high-octane drama and the thrill of a narrative that never slows down. Hit subscribe now and catch the streak before it disappears into the dark.
My daughter asked me why we were standing on the porch. That's what I keep coming back to. Not what my aunt said to me. Not the way my mother stood behind her with her arms crossed like she was waiting for me to disappear. It's my 6-year-old Mia, tugging on my sleeve in her little white dress, the one we picked out together at Target 2 weeks ago because she was so excited to be the flower girl, asking me in that completely innocent voice why we weren't going inside. I didn't have an answer for her. I should back up. My brother Elliot is the golden child. Has been since we were kids. I say that not with bitterness anymore. I've done enough therapy to understand what that dynamic looks like. But just as a fact, the way you'd say the sky is blue or water is wet. Elliot gets the benefit of the doubt. Elliot gets the phone calls. Elliot gets the holiday dinners where nobody fights. I get the version of my family that exists when Elliot isn't around to buffer things, which is a whole different experience. I'm 4 years older than him. My name is June. I work as a middle school art teacher, which my mother has spent the better part of a decade finding polite ways to tell me is not a real career. My husband's name is Sam. We've been married 7 years, we have Mia, and we built a pretty good life on 2 teacher salaries and a lot of stubbornness. Sam teaches high school history 2 towns over. We're not rich. We're fine. We're happy, which I've learned my mother interprets as a personal affront. Elliot is marrying a woman named Brooke. I like Brooke. I want to say that clearly because she is not the villain of this story. Brooke is warm and funny, and she used to bring me a little activity books when she came to family dinners before the wedding planning started consuming everything. I think Brooke is a genuinely good person who has a family that loves her and doesn't fully understand that mine is a loaded gun with a hair trigger. The flower girl situation started about 6 weeks before the wedding. Brooke has a niece, her older sister's daughter, who is 5. Her name is Harper. When Brooke and Elliot first got engaged, they asked if Mia wanted to be a flower girl, and Mia lost her mind with happiness. She talked about it for weeks. She made drawings of herself in a flower girl dress. She told everyone at school. Her teacher sent me a message saying Mia had written her, "I am going to be a flower girl," sentence and handwriting practice for 3 days in a row. So when my mother called me 8 weeks before the wedding and said, very carefully, that Brooke's family had requested Harper be the flower girl and that they were rethinking the role, I went very still. I asked her what that meant. She said it just made more sense to have one flower girl, more streamlined, cleaner for the photos. I said, so Mia is out? She said, it's Elliot's wedding, June. I didn't fight it on the phone. I've learned, and it took me a long time, that fighting with my mother on the phone accomplishes nothing except making her feel victimized and giving her material to complain about me to other people. So I said I understood, and I hung up, and I sat in my kitchen for about 20 minutes, and then I called Sam into the room and told him. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, did anyone call to tell Mia? Nobody had called to tell Mia. I had to be the one to sit my 6-year-old down and explain that she wasn't going to be the flower girl anymore. I told her that sometimes plans change and that we were still going to the wedding and that she was still going to wear a beautiful dress and see Uncle Elliot get married. She looked at me for a long time and then she said, did I do something wrong? I told her no. I told her absolutely not. And I held it together until she went to go watch TV, and then I went into the bathroom and cried for a while. I didn't pull away from the wedding after that. I want to be clear about that too, because I think there's a version of this story where someone would have said, fine, forget it, we're not coming. I didn't do that. Elliot is my brother. I love him. He didn't make the flower girl decision. I genuinely don't know who did, whether it was my mother or Brooke's family or some combination. And I wasn't going to punish him for it. So we stayed involved. We RSVP'd. I bought a dress. I helped my mother address envelopes when she asked me to, even though she just told me my daughter wasn't good enough to carry a basket of flowers at my brother's wedding. I don't know why I keep doing that. That's what my therapist and I are working on. The rehearsal dinner was on a Friday night. It was at a restaurant about 40 minutes from my parents' house. A nice Italian place. Private room in the back. The kind of event that costs real money to pull off. Brooke's parents were paying for it. My parents were paying for the bar. That had been a whole thing, apparently, that I'd only heard about secondhand. The invitation my mother sent said, immediate family and wedding party, which I assumed meant us. Sam and Mia and me. We are Elliot's immediate family. I am his only sibling. Mia is his only niece. We drove 40 minutes. Mia fell asleep in the car, and I woke her up gently when we pulled into the parking lot, and she was sleepy and warm, and she had a little crease on her cheek from the car seat. She was wearing a navy blue dress with small white flowers on it. She looked perfect. We walked to the entrance of the restaurant, and I pushed open the door to the private room hallway, and that's when my aunt came out. My mother's sister. My Aunt Renee. She and my mother have been close their whole lives in that way. That sometimes means they enable each other's worst impulses. Renee has never particularly liked me. I've never been able to fully figure out why. It's one of those family things where you spend years trying to decode the reason, and eventually you realize there might not be one. Some people just decide who they like and who they don't before you're old enough to have done anything about it. She came out into the hallway and she looked at me, and then she looked at Sam, and then she looked at Mia in her little navy dress, and she said, "Oh, you're here." Not warmly. I said, "Yes, we were here. We got the invitation." She said, "This is family and wedding party only, June." I looked at her. I said, "We are family." She said, "Your mother meant close family, the immediate group." She paused and then added, "It's a small dinner." I wanted to ask her if she understood what the word immediate meant. I wanted to ask her if she thought a brother qualified as immediate family. I wanted to ask a lot of things. But Mia was right next to me holding my hand, and she was looking up at Renee with those big eyes, and I was not going to have that conversation in front of her. So I said, "Okay." I said we'd wait outside and figure it out. We went back out to the parking lot. It was a cool night, end of October, and Mia's dress didn't have sleeves. I took off my cardigan and put it around her shoulders, and she looked up at me and said, "Mom, why are we standing outside?" I told her we were just getting some air. She said, "Is it because of the flowers?" That one got me. She said it so matter-of-factly, like she'd already filed it in the category of things that happened to her because of something she couldn't quite explain. She's 6. She shouldn't have a category like that yet. I texted my mother. I said we'd been told we weren't supposed to be there, and I was standing outside with Sam and Mia, and I wanted to know if that was correct. She read it. I could see the read receipt. She didn't respond. Sam was quiet next to me. He had his hand on the back of my neck, just steady, which is what he does when he doesn't want to say anything that might make me feel worse. He asked if I wanted to just go home and get dinner somewhere, the three of us, make it a nice night anyway. He said it gently. He wasn't giving up on my behalf. He was giving me an out. I was about to say yes. I was actually pulling up a Thai place in my head that Mia loves when my phone rang. It was my dad. My dad and I have a complicated relationship, which is its own long story. He is not a bad man. He loves me, I think, in the way that some fathers love daughters who remind them of themselves, which means he understands me and also, for most of my life, has not known what to do with that. He's spent 30 years married to my mother, which has meant 30 years of keeping the peace, of staying quiet, of not rocking the boat. I don't blame him for it. It's just how things were. He chose her side most of the time. Not because he agreed, but because it was easier. He'd never once publicly disagreed with my mother in front of other people. That's important. I answered the phone and he didn't say hello. He said, "Where are you?" I said we were in the parking lot. I said Aunt Renee had told us we weren't supposed to be there. There was a pause. And then my father, who had not raised his voice at my mother in 30 years of marriage, said in a very flat voice, "Don't move. I'm coming out." He hung up. I looked at Sam. Sam raised his eyebrows. About 4 minutes later, my father came out the front door of the restaurant. He was in his dinner jacket. He looked, I don't know how to describe it. He looked the way people look when they've made a decision and they're past the point of second-guessing it. He came straight to me and he put his hand on my face for a second. He hasn't done that since I was a kid. And then he looked down at Mia and said, "Hi, sweetheart. You look beautiful." Mia said thank you. She liked his tie. He smiled at her. Then he turned and walked back inside. We followed him. The private room had about 25-30 people in it. Round tables, candles, bread baskets, the whole thing. My mother was at a table near the front with Renee and a few of my mother's friends from her book club who had never really understood the point of inviting to a rehearsal dinner. Elliot and Brooke were at the head table with Brooke's parents. Everyone was mid-conversation, mid-dinner roll, mid-whatever. My father walked to the center of the room. He didn't clear his throat. He didn't tap a glass. He just stopped walking and he said loudly enough for the room to hear, "I want everyone to know that my daughter June, my son-in-law Sam, and my granddaughter Mia are here and they are welcome here, as they should have been from the beginning. They are family. They are the only family I want to talk about tonight." He said it and then he just stood there. The room was completely silent. I watched my mother's face go through about 6 emotions in 4 seconds. I watched Renee put down her fork. I watched Brooke's mother lean over and whisper something to Brooke. I watched Elliot stand up from his chair. And for one awful second, I thought he was going to be angry. And then he walked over to me and he hugged me and he said, quietly, "I didn't know, June. I didn't know they told you not to come." I believe him. I actually believe him. My father led us to a table. There was one near the side that had empty seats, which told me the "this dinner is too small" explanation was not entirely accurate. And he sat down with us and he put Mia in the chair next to him and spent the next 20 minutes teaching her how to properly use a fish fork, which she found deeply fascinating. My mother did not come over to our table that night. Renee did not come over to our table that night. But about halfway through dinner, Brooke came over. She crouched down next to Mia's chair, and she said she was so happy we were there and she had a question. She'd been thinking about it, actually, for a few weeks, and she wanted to know if Mia would like to carry a small bouquet of flowers down the aisle. Not as an official flower girl role, she said quickly. She didn't want it to feel like a consolation prize, but because she had been told Mia had made flower girl practice drawings at school, and Brooke had thought that was the sweetest thing she'd ever heard and she wanted her to have flowers. Mia turned to look at me. I told her it was her call. She turned back to Brooke and said very solemnly, "I would like that very much." Brooke laughed, and it was real, you know? Not a polite laugh. A real one. She said she'd get Mia a bouquet to match the bridesmaids, and it would be just for her. The wedding was the next day. My mother was civil in the way that people are civil when they are furious, and also in front of an audience. We did not have a conversation beyond logistics. My father walked Elliot down the aisle, which is what Elliot had always wanted, the two of them walking together. And when he passed our row, he squeezed my hand. Mia walked behind Harper with her bouquet. She held it with both hands and she was so careful with it, so serious. She looked like she was carrying something fragile and important. When she got to her spot, she turned and found my face in the crowd and gave me the biggest smile I've ever seen, and I had to look up at the ceiling for a second. I cried at the ceremony, which I don't say often, not out of sadness, just out of that specific emotion that doesn't really have a name. The one that happens when something has been hard for a long time, and then suddenly there's a small moment of okay, right in the middle of it. The reception was fine. Sam danced with Mia for about an hour straight. My father gave a toast that was about Elliot and how proud he was. And he looked over at us a few times when he talked about family meaning everything, and I knew what he meant. A few weeks after the wedding, he called me on a Tuesday afternoon, which he almost never does. He asked how I was. I said I was good. He said he wanted me to know that what had happened at the rehearsal dinner had been wrong, and that he should have spoken up sooner, a lot sooner than that, actually, and he was sorry it took him that long. I told him it meant more than he knew that he did it at all. He got quiet for a second. Then he said, "Your mother and I are working some things out." I said, "Okay." He said, "I just wanted you to know I see you." I should have said it more. I've thought about that phone call a lot since then. About how sometimes people who love you are still capable of letting you down quietly, over and over, through years of small silences, and about how it's not too late for them to say so. It doesn't fix everything. It doesn't undo Mia asking me if it was because of the flowers. But it's something. My relationship with my mother is what it is. We talk occasionally. There's no big reconciliation, no dramatic moment of apology, no conversation where she tells me she understands what she did. I'm not holding my breath for that. I've made my peace with the version of her she's willing to be, but Mia still has her bouquet. We pressed some of the flowers and put them in a little frame. She hung it next to her bed. She told her class the next week that she was a flower princess at her uncle's wedding. Her teacher said it was the cutest thing she'd heard all year. I think that counts for something. I think that counts for a lot. I've thought a lot about what actually happened that night. Not the dramatic version, not the story I tell at a dinner party to make people gasp, but the real version, the quiet one underneath all of it. My father spent 30 years choosing the easier thing. I don't say that to condemn him. I understand it now in a way I couldn't when I was younger. Keeping peace in a house with my mother is not a small job. It requires a certain kind of daily decision to let it go, to not push, to smooth things over and move forward. He made that decision thousands of times, and for a long time, I was one of the things he let go. What I've come to understand is that people don't change because someone argues them into it. They change because something inside them finally reaches a limit, some quiet internal threshold that nobody else can see or predict. My father reached his that Friday night in a restaurant parking lot, watching his granddaughter stand outside in the cold in a dress with no sleeves, asking why she wasn't allowed in. Something in him made a decision, and once he made it, he didn't hesitate. That's what I want to remember. Not the confrontation, not my mother's face, not Renee putting down her fork. I want to remember that my father walked to the center of that room and said we were family, that it was possible for him to do that it wasn't too late. I think about Mia a lot in all of this. She's 6. She already has a category in her head for things that happen to her that she can't explain. That breaks my heart every time I think about it. But she also pressed her wedding flowers and hung them on her wall and told her whole class she was a flower princess. She held both things at the same time, the hurt and the joy, without even realizing that's a skill most adults spend years trying to develop. There's something I keep returning to, which is that the people who treated us badly that night didn't get there suddenly. My mother didn't wake up one morning and decide to be cold. Renee didn't randomly choose not to like me. These things built slowly, through years of small choices, small decisions to exclude, to dismiss, to prioritize one child over another, one version of the family over the real one. Actions accumulate, patterns solidify. What looks like a single cruel moment is almost always the result of 100 smaller ones that nobody corrected, and the same is true in the other direction. Sam didn't become someone who puts his hand on the back of my neck when I'm about to fall apart overnight. That took 7 years of showing up. Brooke didn't become someone who thinks about a 6-year-old's flower girl drawings and decides to do something about it without being asked. That's just who she is, built from a lifetime of paying attention to people. We are, all of us, the sum of what we repeatedly do. Not the grand gestures, the repeated ones. I'm still working on what I repeatedly do. I'm still working on not walking back into rooms that ask me to leave, on not addressing envelopes for people who've just told me my daughter isn't welcome. My therapist would say that's the work. I think she's right. What I know for certain is that Mia's bouquet is on her wall. My father called me on a Tuesday and said he sees me, and somewhere in that restaurant something shifted. Not everything, not permanently, maybe not even enough. But something. That counts. I've decided it counts.